About 10 years ago when I was 12, I would always go into the nearby woods with my friends for most of the day. One night, we left pretty late. Usually I got home before dark, but today, I knew I wouldn't make it back, and I already knew my parents would be mad at me. We were walking in a group for a few blocks, then a couple of my friends split from us to go to their house. I started to notice that a van kept driving past us. I didn't think anything of it. And then my last friend split to go to her house. I had about 5 to 10 minutes left until mine. Then I see that van again, and it pulled up right beside me and stopped. The driver rolled down the front window. Then she told me that she can't find her son and she's been looking all evening. And she asked me if I seen him. I looked and I said no. Then she asked me if I wanted to get in her van to help find him. I said no again, and I looked forward. Then she asked me, am I sure? I didn't answer and I started to walk faster. Then all of a sudden there was some guy in her back seat that said, "Let's just fucking snatch her." I looked at the van for a split second as the woman looked in the back seat and she sped up to park on the side of the street. I started running through yards. I heard the doors open and shut on the van, but I didn't look back until I got home. Nobody followed me. I told my parents and we called the cops. I never missed curfew after that.
No!
I am in my mid-40s. This is what happened nearly 20. I am in my mid-40s. This is what happened nearly 20 years ago. One day I visited one of my friends at his apartment, which was very old and shabby. There was an entrance to an elevator in the center of the corridor. I can't remember well, but my friend lived in unit 701 or 801 on the 7th or 8th floor. So looking at the apartment building from outside the main entrance, his house was on the far left end. One summer day, my friend said he was alone and didn't have any plans. So we called 2 of our friends and had a drinking party. The 4 of us had been drinking since the early evening, and just before passing out, we all lied on the floor, turned the lights off, and started talking. While talking to each other, a beam of street light entered through the window and was shining on the ceiling. I guess the street lights on the first floor of the apartment complex were on. Of course, we were talking while gazing at the ceiling. All of a sudden, the white ceiling turned black, as if something covered up the light. At that moment, we looked out the window while crouching down. Someone with a creepy vibe was hanging on a steel bar outside the window. Since the light was shining from behind that person, we could not see his face clearly. Then, after making an unidentifiable gesture, he smiled, showing his white teeth, and without making a sound. We were so shocked at that moment that we stopped talking and were frozen with silence. Suddenly, one of us picked up an empty bottle of wine and ran toward the window shouting, "Kill that bastard!" But the creepy guy had disappeared. After a few minutes, we went out of the apartment to see where he had gone, but we could not find him. We could only hear his stomping footsteps and assumed he entered the corridor and went down the stairs. Going down the stairs is the only way that stomping sound could be made. It sounded like he descended to the first floor and was walking around, so we followed down the stairs looking for him, but quickly returned to the apartment, still filled with fear. At first, we thought it must have been a robber or some crazy guy laughing in front of the window. But when we came back to our friend's house, we were all shocked. The distance between the end of the corridor and the window of our friend's apartment was too long for someone hanging onto the steel window bar to jump across. Only a crazy person would try and fall to their death. Ordinary people can't even hold on to the steel bar. We thought that maybe someone had committed suicide by jumping from the roof of the apartment and cut the steel bar while falling. So we went down to the first floor to see if a body was there, but there wasn't a single trace. After that experience, I never visited his house again.
It was on Friday night. I was finishing the last deliveries that I worked for. I was headed to the bar that I would usually go to every night to grab a glass of wine. I noticed there was a new bar that had recently opened, a kilometer away from the usual bar, so I decided to try it out. When I arrived and pushed the entrance door, I noticed something very weird. There were only 5 people inside, and they were all dressed in Halloween costumes, like vampire, ghost, werewolf, witch, and black magician. I felt really uncomfortable because I was the only ordinary person there, and also because Halloween was over 2 days ago. I was still awkwardly standing there blocking the entrance when all of a sudden, all the people started staring at me as if I had done something terribly wrong. I made my move and walked over to the bartender. The bartender looked almost like a real executioner. He asked me rudely in a gruff voice, "What do you want to sacrifice, blood or flesh?" Well, that creeped the hell out of me, but I thought this was his way of taking a Halloween order of alcohol. So I requested to him, "1 glass of blood, please." He turned around, grabbed a wine bottle, and poured it into a wine glass. Later, he opened a drawer and took out a black satanic pentagram necklace. He dipped the necklace 3 times while muttering something into my drink. To my surprise, the wine turned black in color, and he placed the glass on the table and told me to drink it in 1 shot. I was really thirsty at that moment, so I took the glass and drank it completely. It was quite strong, and my vision was slowly starting to blur. I paid the bartender and left the bar immediately. While I was walking, I started to feel dizzy, and my vision was worsening. I wasn't focused on where I was going, as my mind was in a vision of all the faces of all the people I saw in that bar, maniacally laughing and giggling at me. All of a sudden, I had already arrived home during my vision. At first, I was relieved, but when I closed the door behind me and turned around, I knew that I was in the wrong house. It was completely abandoned, cold, gloomy, and barely lit with the rays of moonlight. I tried to open the door, but it was totally locked. Right when I was going to run into the door to break it, I heard the upper wooden ceiling was creaking, as if someone was up there walking slowly, step by step. I was really afraid as I had no weapon to protect myself. I tried to call 911, but had no reachable service to call. My only option was to go upstairs and find my way out. I carefully walked upstairs and reached the top. To my left was a dead end, but to my right I saw a hallway with 3 doors on each side. I opened the doors one by one to find nothing but dark, empty rooms and no way to escape. Finally, when I opened the 6th door, I saw a pentagram was drawn on the floor with 5 candles around, touching all 5 corners of the star. This sent me back to where the bartender dipped a necklace with the same symbol into my drink, and there was a figure floating vertically right above the symbol below. But the light provided by the candles was not enough for me to figure out what was floating. Accidentally, I dropped my phone on the old wooden floor, which created a loud sound. The figure was slowly advancing to my direction. I quickly backed off and hit my head against a wall behind. That figure, I can't forget it. My body was completely paralyzed when I saw that the same bartender at the bar was this guy. He was still dressed as an executioner and faced my powerless body. To make matters worse, the doors of the empty room started opening on their own, one by one, and out came all of the 5 people I saw at the bar. They were all laughing at me to the point I passed out. Then I heard silence. Then I woke up and realized that I was in a hospital. I asked one of the nurses what was going on. She told me that a group of teenagers saw me walking out of the forest and then walking to the abandoned house. They tried calling out to me, but I didn't respond nor look at them. Then the group saw me entering the house, and when they tried to open the door, it was locked. And so they called 911 thinking that I was trapped in that house. 30 minutes later, the police staff arrived and broke open the door and found me unconscious lying on the floor. They brought me into the hospital and were trying to investigate what had happened in that abandoned house. Later, I told police officers the whole story when they came to ask, but they didn't seem to believe me, while some of them were laughing, thinking that I was making it up. After that, I went home and directly went to sleep. The next morning, I hurried to the bathroom because I had to vomit very badly. And after I did, I noticed that my vomit was black. To forget things, I tried taking a cold shower. And when I was showering, I felt a sharp sting on my back. Then, when I changed the water temperature from cold to warm, the sting started to feel even more painful. I turned back with my head, barely making it to see behind. Then I was shocked for life. I had the same satanic pentagram carved on my back, which was surely done by a sharp object. From then on, I never went to a bar again.